I'm Laura Rogers with National Public Radio's Rylan Barton. And Rylan, let's begin today with a challenge to Kentucky's abortion ban. And the Court of Appeals panel has ruled that at least one of those women does have the standing to challenge the ban, meaning the case will now go back to Jefferson Circuit Court. Tell us more about this one.
Yeah, so she's suing, arguing that the ban violates her religious freedom and that it would undercut her ability to undergo in vitro fertilization. So this all comes from this lawsuit. Earlier this year, a lower court dismissed the lawsuit. It was filed by her and two other Jewish women who said that the law gives preference to Christian definitions of life and disadvantages Jewish beliefs. But last week, the Kentucky Court of Appeals ruled that this one woman, Jessica Kalb, does have standing to sue over the abortion ban. She has 9 embryos that are frozen that could be either implanted or donated or destroyed. And that part's key here because remember last year when IVF clinics in Alabama, they stopped offering IVF out of worries about destroying or accidentally destroying embryos because of a state Supreme Court ruling there. That was until the legislature there passed a law that clarified this whole issue. But she says that Kentucky hasn't clarified that issue. And so she's already canceled an embryo implementation from a couple of years ago because she said she was afraid Kentucky's abortion law could be used against her. Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman argues that Kentucky law already protects IVF. And unless he appeals this particular ruling on standing to the state Supreme Court, this lawsuit now, as you said, now heads back to that lower court to be argued, but just with this one plaintiff.
And so what is your understanding of her ultimate goal in this case?
Well, her ultimate goal here and the plaintiffs originally in this lawsuit was to have Kentucky's abortion ban totally dismissed. They say that it's unclear, it's vague. The legislature has attempted to clarify some of those rules so far, but they say especially, and she's saying especially under IVF, it's still unclear right now.
And let's move now to Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, who was also a senior member of the Senate Agriculture Committee, and he is working to close what he calls a loophole in the 2018 Farm Bill language that he says it has allowed some hemp derived THC products to be sold. And he has concerns that this is dangerous for kids. But then he also wants to make sure that hemp remains a viable industry for Kentucky farmers. So tell us more about Senator McConnell's efforts in this regard.
Yeah, so McConnell, back in 2018, he championed this farm bill that had, or this provision in the farm bill that legalized hemp. It allowed states to regulate hemp. And hemp does have low amounts of THC. It's the same intoxicating compound that's found in cannabis or marijuana. And after that 2018 Farm Bill passed, this whole industry popped up of hemp-derived THC products. These seem called Delta 8, Delta 9, and they appear in forms like gummies, drinks, oils. They've become very popular. Now, according to reporting from Kentucky Public Radio, Mitch McConnell says he wants to close that loophole in this bill, which he championed, and he still wants to preserve the ability to grow hemp. Hemp is, after all, this historic cash crop in Kentucky, but he says this whole THC side of it was an unintended consequence of the bill, and that these products aren't safe. He claims that and these are claims that the industry denies. A version of this whole closing the loophole issue, which would heavily, the industry is really worried that it would undercut the hemp industry because all hemp has a form of THC in it, even CBD derived products will have trace amounts of THC. So they're worried that there's going to be no way to totally do away with the THC. A version of this bill has already passed the House, but in the Senate version that McConnell's trying to push forward, it would delay all of these provisions by a year to hopefully give the hemp industry some time to catch up. The hemp industry, is hoping to lobby against, implementation or at least some change to the regulations going forward. So there's plenty of negotiations to go at this point. Even if the Senate passes this, the House would then have to agree to those changes from the Senate.
And let's move now to another lawsuit. A transgender inmate currently incarcerated in northern Kentucky's Boyle County is challenging legislation that was passed earlier this year, meaning her hormone therapy will have to come to an end. Tell us more about that case.
Yeah, so according to the Courier-Journal, this transgender woman who's incarcerated in Boyle County, she's suing over the bill that passed earlier this year that bans hormone therapy for inmates while they're in custody. She's been receiving hormone therapy since 2009, and she's been in prison for a murder conviction since from 2016. She says that that bill violates her 14th Amendment right to equal protection under the law and her 8th Amendment right to not be cruelly and unusually punished. This is a class action lawsuit, so it's inviting other transgender inmates or inmates who are worried about losing hormone therapy to join in on the lawsuit. Attorney General Coleman, he said he's going to defend the law. He says that taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for this sort of treatment and that the legislature's law version of the law should stand.
Has there been any response from doctors when they're asked about stopping hormone therapy?
Well, doctors say that cutting off treatment abruptly can cause physical harm, can cause psychological harm. Something else, just another detail on this, is that state officials say that there are 67 inmates in Kentucky right now who had been receiving hormone therapy who won't be able to under this law.
Rylan Barton with National Public Radio, we thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Laura.